Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning into the Next Move podcast. This is a podcast where we're essentially going to interview people who are making a change in India, whether it be through starting businesses or whether it be through creating organizations that work toward a more equitable society in India. We are getting into the minds of them in this podcast. So if you're looking for a podcast that takes you into the minds of some of the movers and shakers in India, then look no further because this podcast will definitely do that. For this episode, we talked to Abhishek Agarwal, who is the co-founder of Pappco Greenware. And Pappco Greenware is a sustainable food packaging provider. So what that means is they provide your takeaway boxes, your bowls, your plates, your straws, and all of that kind of stuff made from sustainable materials. And Abhishek started this company alongside his father and brother, and they bootstrapped this company, and they're growing very fast, and they're even growing internationally, and they're serving some of the largest hotel chains in India. Now, we all know that single-use plastic is one of the biggest challenges in India and abroad. And Pappco's mission is to help solve that using sustainable materials. And some of the key takeaways that I took from this podcast were you have to just get started and you have to just do it. If you have an idea, you should get moving on it and you can learn along the way. You shouldn't plan and analyze so much that you never actually get started. And that's a big thing I learned from Abhishek. And the second thing was you have to go in and get your hands dirty when you're starting something. And what I mean by that is that you have to work on every aspect of your supply chain, on every aspect of your business to thoroughly understand the challenges that you will face as you scale. And Abhishek really goes into this, how he was a sales guy, he was someone who was packaging his products, he was delivering them to the post office. So he understands every aspect of the business, and as they're scaling, when problems come up, he's much more able and much more properly set to solve these challenges. So that was a big takeaway. And one of the final key takeaways that I took were that as a leader, you should not ask your team to do anything that you wouldn't or haven't done yourself. And this is a great way both to connect with your teams, as well as show them that, look, if they're not performing, that the co-founder and the founders are more than willing and happy to do that job. And it's a very, very cool point, and he really goes into it well, so I'll leave it to him to expand there. So if you want to learn how to make an impact and build a project from scratch, this podcast is definitely for you. Hey everybody, welcome back to another podcast. Today I have Abhishek Agarwal with me, who is the co-founder of Pappco Greenware. They are a sustainable food packaging provider. Hey Abhishek, how are you doing?
Hi, Arman. I'm good. Nice to be connected on your podcast.
Definitely, it's great to have you. And just for the listeners, I've done an introduction before this, but could you go a little bit into who you are? What's your background? What did you study?
Yeah, so I run a company called Pappco Greenware. We are a sustainable food packaging provider. What we do is we make food packaging from natural materials like sugarcane, bamboo, and wheat straw as a replacement to
Mhm.
single-use plastics. And we've been doing this for the last 6 years now, as one of the first companies that set up in India. Before that, I was studying. I have done my bachelor's in business administration, finance, and marketing.
Mhm.
And yeah, I have. Before that was just the regular schooling, and I think I did a small job stint right after I got done with my graduation before setting this up. So that's been
Okay.
the journey so far. Yeah.
So, like, an interesting thing is because, material stuff, some people tend to have a science background. How did you get into the business of, sustainable materials?
So, see, very frankly, the innovation already existed in the world. We just leveraged the existing technology and brought the concept in India.
Mm,
So, the innovation of using of natural fiber to create a disposable product has been around for the last 20 odd years. But
okay.
unfortunately, because it does sell a little higher than a plastic product, it just never
Mm-hmm.
found its way into the market. So
Mm.
we just sort of pioneered that effort and started channeling those products in the Indian market.
So I definitely want to get into the business competitiveness because I know the pricing is a little bit higher. But the first thing I want to
Yeah.
know is, and I think the listeners would love to know is what led you to actually starting this business? Like what idea was it? Was it something you saw in India that you said, look, we have to make a change? What was that spark?
So I think the spark mainly came out of my dad and my brother because I we run this as a family enterprise.
Mm,
So we operate out of this place called Kalba Devi in Mumbai, and
okay,
Kalba Devi is a big business hub, but it's also like a very densely populated area. So on any given day, if you just walk down the road, you'll though one of the most consistent things you'll see is garbage everywhere.
correct.
And it's like, the number of people demand a number of street food stalls and vendors. So there's a lot of plastic on a day-to-day basis used right on our street alone. So, I mean, I think it became like an active part of our observation. And when we came across a solution that wasn't plastic, it actually just kind of even caught our attention and very seriously because we were so aggressively seeing the consumption of plastic right around our office area that we thought that definitely something should be done. And if a solution exists in the world, then it should be brought into India, because we could start inculcating like new behaviors around it.
Makes sense. And who are you guys targeting? Is it, the delivery companies? Is it hotels? Who are you guys going after?
So we started off mainly as a consumer-oriented brand. We were
Hmm.
working with uh, in the B2C segment, we were working for the direct home consumers, people using disposable plates at home made from
Okay.
plastics. We asked
Hmm.
them to upgrade to natural fiber materials. So we started partnering with retail stores all over India to sell our
Hmm.
products.
Hmm.
And we also started targeting these food stalls, local street vendors, caterers, whoever could afford it. Basically, we tried to bring the product in. Now we work with a lot of food delivery companies as well. We are partnered with some of the biggest food delivery companies in India. We run central contracts with all the major five-star hotels in India, with
Wow.
all top QSRs, coffee chains. So we've moved in gradually from the consumer segment to the more B2B segment that's covering the hotels and the QSRs.
I think that's amazing because I really feel like in B2B, you guys could have a huge impact because they're the ones, really providing so much and create so much waste on a daily basis. So I think
Absolutely.
that's Go ahead. I think that's amazing. And I just wanted to know as well, like, what is the aim of the business? Do you guys want to stay in India? I know you guys have also opened up offices in, Dubai and Sri Lanka. So you're looking to go global as well?
Yeah, so the aim has been global. For the last 1.5 years, we've been working quite uh, uh, aggressively in terms of establishing the brand at a global scale because we have done very innovative product designs. And
Hmm.
just using the existing technology, our products solve for more challenges in food delivery than any competitor brand's products in the market globally. So we are
Hmm.
trying to take these designs and push them as much as possible, as far wide as possible, so that we can expand our brand. We just started supplying to Europe. We've started supplying to UK, to Switzerland. We
Wow.
have distributors in Dubai, in Doha. Uh, we have uh, we have distribution partners even in Kenya. So we've gradually been moving in to different markets, and I think it's all happened in the last 1 year that even the global demand is really unlocked for us. So this year we see as the big year when we might establish the brand in many more countries and cities worldwide.
Okay. And I think like these food delivery companies are they the main culprits of this single-use plastic waste, or who is it? Because I know when I order something from, let's say, a Swiggy or a Zomato, the packaging from Zomato and Swiggy isn't in plastic, but the restaurant's still giving it to you in plastic, and that single use must be, it just goes into some sort of landfill or it's burned. But who do you see as the biggest culprits of, single use plastic waste right now?
See, the biggest culprits definitely, when you talk about the food delivery companies, they are building the demand for packaging. The
Mm-hmm.
culture around takeaway is growing, and unfortunately, plastic is about 90% uh, the choice of packaging. It's even though there are sustainable materials apart from our company, there are many other companies working. Plastic is still the dominant choice. So definitely, when you talk about the main culprits, food delivery companies are responsible for building that ecosystem where we are using more packaging. And when we use more packaging, we end up using more plastic invariably because it is just so much more convenient to use
Mm-hmm.
plastic. So at a from an economic standpoint, definitely it's these food delivery companies that are adding to the problem at a very, very enormous and alarming growth rate. And apart from that, the fundamental is the problem is an economic problem, I think, because plastic happens to be so cost effective and so cheap. Unless and until we don't make it unfavorable economically, it will be very difficult to get people to actually genuinely demand sustainable materials.
Right. But in India, I feel, there's been at least some sort of transition. You don't see, plastic bags anymore in major cities like Bangalore. So I feel at least there's some sort of movement, but I agree, there's still so much demand for plastic. So I want to know, like, when you go to a hotel or you go to a Swiggy or you go to anybody, how do you convince them that say, look, our products are better. How do you, it may be a little bit more expensive, but it is worthwhile to go with us. That sale must be a little bit difficult. How do you guys approach it?
So, see, there are three parts to the product. When you talk about packaging, there is utility, there is design, and there is cost. When it comes to utility, definitely Bagasse products are amazing. They offer great functionality. You can microwave in them, you can refrigerate in them. So they have a certain advantage over at least the cheaper forms of plastic. When you talk
Mm-hmm.
about designs, because it's a new industry, we have, in comparison to plastics, we have very few designs as of now active. Even if you bring the entire pool of all sustainable packaging suppliers, our existing available designs might not cover even 10% of the entire plastic portfolio. So uh, there's a certain gap we need to still fill because people want certain shapes in packaging that we are not being able to provide just yet because it takes time
Got
to
it.
build that. And
Got
then the
it.
third factor is the cost factor. We are definitely a more premium form of packaging. So when you go to convince a restaurant or a food delivery partner, they evaluate on all these three grounds. The the most important thing that works in our favor is today, even if somebody can't justify the unit cost of using sustainable packaging, they know deep down that they have to change. There is an enough awareness now being spread against plastic. So even people who don't really care so much for the environment, you can say, are aware that their customers at least care for it. So people are definitely interested. They are definitely not, like without even listening to what the sustainable packaging companies have to offer. They are not shooing them away. Everybody is giving enough time. It is just that it's a gradual process. I feel like once we start getting our advantages in all these three factors, we might be able to cover a bigger sort of market in comparison to plastics for sure. But I see that happening over the next 3 to 4 years. So right now, those are some of the challenges, like it's not just about the price, but it's even from the design point of view, there are some gaps we need to fulfill.
That makes sense. So basically, scaling also your manufacturing capability once it at a higher level, I'm assuming you'd be able to get the cost down as well, right? Once you continue to scale and your unit economics gets better as a company, and even as more and more competitors get in, it's almost potentially better for your business. I want to ask if that's correct because more and more people will, it'll be more distributed, the knowledge will be out there more. And again, like you're saying, the pressure to adopt these sustainable packaging is probably higher for these restaurants.
Definitely. So I think competition is very healthy in a business like ours. Because we are a cost-driven company, competition
Mm-hmm.
also helps in terms of taking the cause forward. So definitely their competition becomes like a partner. And in any business, I feel like competition helps build the market for sure. So if you are the better brand, then you will always benefit from competition. If you are not the better brand, then competition will eat you up. But that is not unique to our sort of industry. So I think it's good right now, the fact that we have a lot of growing competition. In fact, I would say that the players in the market are growing like very, very fast, especially in India.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's really we are creating a push demand. The awareness is rising. I remember about 6 years back when we used to sell this product, people could not tell this is made from sugarcane. Because it's a white color plate, the direct assumption was this is some form of a thermocol plate, just like a
Mm.
different sort of texture. And it used to, like, there was so much energy spent just making people aware of the fact that no, this isn't thermocol. Now we don't have to do that. People in the market, buyers in the market are just aware. They recognize that, yeah, there is this material as well. So that is all thanks to the number of companies trying to promote these sort of products now.
Okay, wow. And that's a great point to lead on to the next area that I want to learn about is the material. Is it durable enough? Like you were talking about the utility. Is it at a point right now where, you're saying you can microwave it, you can do this, but is it functionally as good or better than plastic yet, or do we still have a little bit to go?
See, it's the unfortunate truth. I don't think we'll ever have a material functionally better than plastic for any
Mm,
application. That
mm.
is one of the most beautiful raw materials we have ever created. We have just misused it. That's a different story. But
Oh,
when you look at Bagasse products, we are the product quality and the properties are superb. In functionality, it is not so easy to offer a 100% airtight container, because we are not very rigid form products. These are, at the end of it, they are paper products. So there is a certain amount of bending, folding, and give that the product will have,
sure.
which a hard plastic will not have. So when you want to create more airtight sort of designs in the kind of material we use, the cost goes up by a factor of two almost, because you're using more complicated manufacturing processes, and you're also using more you're using a heavier weight product. So that again sort of kills the market in at least a country like India, where anyways the price gap is not sustainable for people, and they're always
Mm.
constantly looking for something cheaper. So I think it will take some time to solve for these things. We will need some further innovation in the manufacturing processes, bringing more economies of scale into the picture, and definitely then the price can be driven down. But right now, plastic remains functionally the superior material. It is just the sustainability aspect that plastic will never be able to cover, given our current
Mm.
supply chains.
But I personally think that, a sustainable packaging is a huge differentiator for any restaurant. Whenever I've gotten takeaway and I receive a sustainable, and you're saying bagasse, right? Bagasse is anything made out of sugarcane, is that correct? Or is
That's
it
right.
just a
That's right.
sustain? Okay, so anytime I receive something like that, it may not be as functional, but I definitely feel like, wow, I'm happy that this restaurant is, making an effort to get this done. And I know that a lot of my friends, feel the same way because, as our generation grows up, the millennials, we're seeing that, look, we're at a point where we have to do something. So we're all, willing to, pay a little bit more or have a little bit of give and take to, make sure
Yeah,
there's less waste.
true.
Um, but I wanted to know, how did you guys, source that particular material of sugarcane, of wheat? How did you guys say that this is what we need to use moving forward?
So, see, sugarcane conversion for paper has been happening for more than, I think, 30, 40 years. People don't
Okay.
realize, but the kind of tissue papers and other things we use are generally made from natural fiber raw material.
Mm.
This sort of molding material technology is new. So when that technology became available in the world, sugarcane and bamboo became the natural choice of raw material, because when we talk about bagasse, you're not using a
Yeah.
virgin raw material per se. It is after the sugarcane is cultivated. That means you prepared your sugar, your jaggery, or your rum, anything, that you use the sugarcane for. The leftover, that entire haystack sort of that is left over. If
Mm-hmm.
you would have seen at a sugarcane vendor stall, once he like pumps out the juice from the sugarcane, there's that entire sort of uh, grass waste that is left
Correct.
in a bucket, right?
Correct.
So that is bagasse. So that is essentially the byproduct of an existing manufacturing process that is reconverted into making a product. So we are taking a waste as a raw material and we are adding value to it. In other cases, this waste could be used as a compost. It could be used as cow fodder. It could be burned to generate electricity, or in most cases, because it does not have a great intrinsic value, it is just burnt in the open, and that causes a lot of air pollution.
Mm.
So that's why it's a more natural choice of raw material, because it is an existing waste byproduct of a manufacturing. And that's why we decided to go ahead and use this sort of a raw material for our products.
Got it. And I read on an article by Your Story that said, Anil, your co-founder, went
Yeah,
around for 6 months trying to find the perfect manufacturer to develop this
yeah,
for you guys. Can you talk about a
absolutely.
little bit some of the challenges there in getting that done?
So, see, he's my father, so he is a sourcing expert, I would say. And there are many factories in China that were operating, or in Thailand that were operating, in different parts of the world making such products.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to have a good partner manufacturer that understood the technology and could convert it into the design and the product we were looking for. So the idea was to find a partner that sort of uh, was honest to the raw material choice. We didn't want a case where we are subscribing to a product that is supposed to be made from sugarcane waste, but to cut costs at the manufacturer and they are ending up using like tree pulp or some other form of raw material that we don't find okay for our application. So that was a
Right.
big due diligence process that we had to follow. We had to see that the quality of output the supplier was guaranteeing, because it's a food application. Apart from the sustainability, the hygiene is a very, very important criteria. You cannot compromise on that. So we had to be sure that the factories we were working with were completely sanitized. They had minimum contamination possibilities on the workspace. They had enough quality control and audit processes so that any output that was made for a day was checked sufficiently. And for any sort of issues in the pulp or issues in the performance, in the oil proofing or in the water resistant, these kind of things. So there were very small parameters that we sort of defined for ourselves, and then based on that we sort of filtered the right supplier categories. And obviously, oh, like the underlying to all of that was the price factor as well, because
Mm-hmm.
we are building a market. Our most aggressive market is India, and India is a highly price sensitive market.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important, no innovation has any value if it doesn't meet the market sort of price expectation. So these were some of the factors. That's why we took a long time to find the right supplier base.
Wow, and it sounds like actually there's quite a lot of barrier to entry to do this kind of thing because if you didn't have your father who was a sourcing expert, you
Hmm.
know, you potentially wouldn't have the knowledge to know, the hygiene factor is extremely important. The price,
Yeah,
how do you, negotiate? How do you get the manufacturing, all of that kind of stuff done?
yeah.
That's quite a big barrier to entry.
No,
Um,
absolutely. So I think, so like I'm saying, right? I think in this sort of category, to be a great brand, there is a lot of barrier to entry. But to be a generic sort of brand, there is almost none. It's
but then you possibly wouldn't be making you know a great product like you're saying because the material may be used from different ways like you were saying earlier
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
doesn't make it sustainable.
Absolutely. So we have currently also in the Indian market highly compromised products. The raw material they are using, the quality of the pulp that's going in to make them is very cheap. They obviously sell cheaper, but they are not hygienic, and it's just like it's unfortunate, but the price always dominates the supply chain.
Really? Wow. That's kind of sad to know that, we're not they're selling these things as sustainable. And is there any sort of governing body that says, look, you have to meet these XYZ standards to be called sustainable? Or is it just like I can say whatever I want as a marketing tactic?
No, there are norms, there are international certifications in place. So if you look
Mhm.
at it as a global standard, there is a body called the Biodegradable Products Institute, BPI, and
Okay.
they are probably the, you can say they are the sort of the authority in defining what is compostable and what is not. So there are many factors.
Okay.
It's not only that the product has to degrade, but it's also about how much toxicity is the product leaching in the soil. It has to be non-toxic for the soil. Then only it qualifies as a compostable product. So there are these factors that they define, but that is an
Okay.
international definition, right? When you move it to a country like India, in our frame of reference, we have a very clear-cut government policy that is against using plastics, but does not mean that brands have to reproduce a compostability certificate for the bagasse they are manufacturing.
Mm.
So, so there are definitely a lot of checks and balances in place in different countries, or from international bodies that define what qualifies a product as usable or biodegradable or compostable. But I feel like globally these things don't move in sync. Like each country also has its own demands, its own sort of regulations or its own parameters. So you could sell a product in most countries without ever getting it certified as compostable, but yet claiming it so. In countries like Germany, in the US, you'd have those issues, because at the end of the day, who really cares if you are selling a truly compostable product? It's the guys who are composting it.
Hmm.
So in
Hmm.
countries where you have infrastructure for composting the waste, definitely there you will see that there is more emphasis given on using the right sort of raw materials and getting the right certifications if you want to sell something that's compostable.
Got it. Got it. And I just want to transition from there. I read also that you guys bootstrapped this company, and I know a lot of people out there who are looking to start company or companies are also looking to bootstrap. Could you talk a little bit about, your journey bootstrapping it, some of the challenges you faced, and then how you overcame those?
See, bootstrapping is it. It could be a comfortable and an uncomfortable process. It depends on how much funds you are willing to allocate of your own, right? So we didn't start off with heavy funds. I remember when we were working originally in our office, even though we had the funds to invest, we refrained because the market was so new. We weren't sure how the business would generate revenue. So we had like cases in office, where I was uh, totally, we were containing our expenses to the level that even when we wanted to buy file cabinets or a new table to sit on, we thought it's just better to use old corrugated carton boxes and just make something out of, as a makeshift sort of furniture or a makeshift table. And we use these makeshift things for almost 6 months to a year because
Wow.
we cut our expenses as much as possible. When I had started working, I mean, it was about building the brand, and you could never hire a sales guy to promote a product nobody understands. So it was all about going on field. We had to enter the smallest store, show the product, explain it to the owner that this is what we sell. So we were our own sales guys, and once you got the order, we are packing it ourselves in the office, and then I'm loading it in my car, and I'm going and delivering
Wow.
it as well. So I remember, we did all these things, like whether it's parking, like because we had staff definitely, but we had what, one or two guys in addition to like three of us working. And obviously I won't expect my dad to do these things, so my brother and I, we used to take that sort of responsibility. We used to go out, and on some day when your staff is busy with something else, you have to go out, do the delivery also yourself. So it was funny, but I used to pose as a salesman of my company, because I didn't want to come across as the owner who's not even having the right sort of staff to take this forward. So
Right.
I had made visiting cards that showed my name as sales manager. And whenever negotiating a deal, I used to say that let me ask the boss and get back to you. So these are things you have to do sometimes, but that's because we were
Yeah,
bootstrapped in a limited way. Our funds were very limited. There are some companies that bootstrap with like, heavy investment as well. But I think it was good because we learned things like at least for me, it was important to learn those things as well. So that now that when we have a team, whenever they have an issue, whenever in their market, I feel like I know exactly what they're doing wrong. I feel like I know exactly what to tell them. Like because I can put myself in their shoes. In fact, I've been in their shoes for longer than they have. So all those things help. It definitely was a great learning experience also for us. So I think everyone who's looking to set up their businesses and are short of funds should be willing to do it in an uncomfortable way. They shouldn't overthink whether how their brand comes across or how professional they come across. I think in the end, it just matters that you should just go out there and do it. And I think the market will respond if your product is good.
wow. I think that's, you really said two very clear and very cool learnings for people. That one of the big advantages of bootstrapping, and correct me if I'm taking these wrong, but is
Hmm.
you get to learn the entire funnel and the entire supply chain, whether that be
Absolutely.
sales or the material or everything. You're not doing it fancy. You know everything and where everything can go wrong. So when you
Absolutely.
scale, you can understand your team members' issues, saying, "Look, this is the challenge," and you've been there, so you know how to solve it.
Absolutely. Even when you look at it, right? Like my packing staff in my factory, um, on some days when we are overloaded and they are overworked, they don't feel like I'm pushing them aggressively because they know that if the work is exceeding what they can achieve, I'll be there packing the products with them. Even now, if
Yeah.
it's required, I'll do that. Instead of adding to my expenses, if I can remove 6 hours and go and help out as the one additional labor, we do that because these are things necessary. Because you want to spend the money in the right places. So we've had initially, when we started getting our first few orders, we realized we were understaffed to like sort of fulfill them. So we used to stay in our warehouses till about 9, 10 in the night packing, and we used to have like speed competitions between our laborers and us, in terms of who can pack faster. But we've done
Wow.
these things, and it was
Yeah.
fine. Like it doesn't mean that if you're the boss you can't do that work. We've moved cartons around, we've loaded them in trucks along with our staff. So it was important. I feel like our staff also like feels very connected to us because of that. They never feel that sort of gap or that imposition when we have excess work because they've seen us do that sort of stuff with as much aggression as we expect from them. So it helps.
Wow.
It helps definitely. Yeah.
Is that one of your biggest leadership tips, saying, get down and dirty and, make a connection with your employees as well?
For sure, for sure. I mean, we never did it from that mindset, thinking that it would be a great way to sort of role model. But I think in hindsight, I feel like that's really helped me get more comfortable when I command things from my staff because they know that if they don't deliver, we are more than capable of doing their job. So yeah, definitely, I feel like it is very important that anybody who's trying to take up a leadership position understands and executes every function that they plan to lead. Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing learning, and I think a lot of people will take a lot from that. And I just want to be cognizant of your time, and I kind of want to transition into, the conclusion of this interview. And I want to learn, what is your ambition, at the end of your career, at the end of Popco, and what is the impact that you want to leave on the world?
See, the journey is very long. I feel like if we can take the market, from sustainable packaging being a differentiating factor for brands, like you mentioned, my ideal goal is that it stops being that differentiating factor. It becomes the norm. Like plastic becomes a
Mm,
differentiating factor where brands are called out for using it. So I feel like if we can drive the market from where we are today, where you see a sustainable packaging and you're fascinated, oh wow, look, they're not using plastic. Taking that from going to, oh wow, look, they are using plastic. That's so bad. So that is the end goal. I feel like that is where we want the household conversation to go. We don't want a sales pitch to go as use sustainable packaging and make your brand stand out. We want it to go as don't use plastic because you will be called out. So I feel like that's
mm.
the journey we want to take for this business and this brand, definitely.
Got it. And what does the next few years look like for Popco and yourself? Are you continuing to go international? Are you coming out with new products? What's the next few years
So
looking like?
both. Both of those are exactly the focus. We're doing a lot of new product launches this year. We've set up our own in-house product design team about 6 months back. So earlier we used to outsource a lot of our designing. Now we have a team in-house that's working and constantly ideating about the new sort of set of designs we can come out with. And this year we are going to do some really, really groundbreaking designs for the market, and we're going to expand it globally. Our entire vision is to be across India, definitely in every city, but also present in most countries globally, but gradually because we'll have to even scale our supplies to match that demand.
Okay, okay. And one of the last things that I want to ask is, we're the consumers. People listening to this are the consumers.
Mhm.
What do you want to ask of us, when we're thinking about our packaging choices and all this kind of stuff? What kind of impact can we help, to make a difference in, making India a more green place?
I think two things. Um, Number one is a consumer definitely can impact the packaging choice of the brand he or she subscribes to. I have seen the biggest brands, the biggest ice cream chains change from using a plastic straw to going to a paper straw just because a couple of customers left a negative feedback against it in the stores. So great brands take feedback very seriously. So leave those feedbacks if you're not happy with the plastic packaging, because the consumer in the end has more power than even the supplier who's trying to inculcate that change. I think that's definitely one part. The second part is I think there are a lot of triggers and there is a lot of sort of bait right now for us to consume more, for us to especially conveniently consume more. And all sort of convenient consumptions come with excess packaging. So I think as consumers, we need to start reducing our sort of trend towards food deliveries or online ordering and kind of things, and start taking a little more effort to sort of picking up things from the store or eating at the restaurant, because that same product still comes to us with lesser packaging. So I think at a personal level, if we can do this, it would also help sort of stabilizing the demand for unsustainable packaging. And then as a complement, if you can demand brands to use sustainable packaging, we might be able to like shift the curve and go downwards in our consumption of plastics.
Awesome. Awesome. Abhishek, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on this podcast. I learned so much from it, and I just want to say thank you so much.
No, I'm really glad, Arman. Can't wait to hear the podcast.
Great. Sounds good. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'll see you guys in the next podcast.